Hello, iterative marketers. Welcome to the Iterative Marketing Podcast, where each week we give marketers and entrepreneurs actionable ideas, techniques, and examples to improve your marketing results. If you want notes and links to the resources discussed on the show, sign up to get them emailed to you each week at iterativemarketing.net. There you'll also find the Iterative Marketing blog and our community LinkedIn group where you can share ideas and ask questions of your fellow iterative marketers. Now let's dive into the show. Hello and welcome to the Iterative Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Robinson, and with me as always is the tenacious and perseverant Elizabeth Aaron. How are you doing today, Elizabeth?
I'm well. How are you, Steve?
I'm great. This is 'tis the season for New Year's resolutions now that we're finally past the holidays, right?
Yes. A few weeks into the year. So did you make any resolutions and how is it going so far?
So I'm one of those people that's always trying to improve myself, right? So I don't really, I have resolutions all year long that I fail on rather than just all at once at the beginning of the year. But in this instance, unfortunately, one of those, I had an anti-New Year's resolution this year.
Really?
So in December, probably around November, I fell off in going to the gym, right? Mm-hmm. And just because things got busy with the holidays and life and business and everything seemed to gang up on me to keep me from going. And then I fell off the wagon. And in December, I'm like, okay, holiday madness is going to end. I can get back on the wagon to start going to the gym. And then I started thinking about all of the droves of people that go to the gym in January and how miserable it is. And it totally deterred me from actually starting to go back to the gym in January. So I almost had an anti-New Year's resolution in that I decided I was going to procrastinate on starting going back to the gym until February, if nothing more out of convenience.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I also had a New Year's resolution of leading a healthier lifestyle, although my working out did not kind of stop or slow down in November. I think mine slowed down more in August. So I've got some ground to make up. But yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. My other one is, I had two. So leading a healthier lifestyle, not necessarily working out, but leading a healthier lifestyle. And two, we've talked about this before, but I buy books. I buy books by the drove and I don't read them as quickly as I buy them. So I put my stack of books on my nightstand and I am making sure I read a certain number of chapters every night, no matter how tired I am, so that I can start getting through these books. So those are my New Year's resolutions this year.
So if you're reading a certain number of chapters, regardless of how tired you are, the goal then is to get through the books, not to necessarily remember anything that you read?
Well, very rarely is my tiredness a factor. Usually I end up reading more, but it's easy to say, oh, I'm too tired tonight. And instead I'm just going to watch some TV or play on my iPad. So it's always the book, not other technology.
Got it. So then you get into it and you're like, no, I'm not that tired at all. This is really interesting. Oh, wait, now it's too late. I should have been asleep an hour ago.
Except for I've been reading this book, literally, I think I've been reading it for a year and a half. It's nonfiction, and it's about this blizzard that hit the Midwest in the 1800s. And literally getting through a chapter is it takes a long time to get through a chapter. So my goal is I need to finish that book. It's called The Children's Blizzard. It's very interesting, but oh my goodness, it is the slowest going book I've ever read in my life. So if I could finish that one, that would be a huge accomplishment.
Excellent. Well, keep us posted.
Yeah.
What are we actually talking about today?
Yes. So today we are talking about our Grow and Give journey states. And this sort of concludes this deep dive series that we've been doing. We started with See, moved to Think, and moved to Do. And now we're in our final portion where we talk about Grow and Give.
And we've kind of got a normal rhythm to these sorts to this series. So we start talking about what do goals look like and objectives behind the Grow and Give journey states. What are we trying to accomplish with our audience? What sort of content do we need for each of these journey states? We'll talk about the targeting. And then last, but certainly not least, we'll discuss measurement and what metrics and KPIs are most important and why.
So before we dive into Grow and Give, let's just give a quick overview for anyone who may be tuning in and this is the first deep dive episode they listen to, or since we've split this up and had other podcasts in between, just as a quick reminder. So when we take a look at our journey states, if you are looking for some high level coverage, I recommend checking out episode 16, or if you'd prefer a sort of a quicker overview, Steve wrote a phenomenal blog called See, Think, Do, a framework for understanding your prospect state of being. And that really summarizes all of the journey states very concisely.
And thank you for the compliment. We will link to that blog post in the show notes. But we'll run through the different journey states really quickly here just to give you the top level definition of each one. So when we look at our C state, those are individuals who are qualified. They could buy our products or our services, but they're not even close to being in market at this particular point in time, or they've got a vendor that they're happy with and they're not looking at all to change vendors. We do a deep dive of C state in episode 23.
When we look at our think state, these are prospects that are qualified and thinking about purchasing or changing vendors, but they don't necessarily have a timeline or a commitment to do so. And we talk about this in depth in episode 27.
Then some of our prospects will move into do state. And these are people that are not only qualified and they're interested in our product or service, but they made a commitment to themselves or to somebody else, or they have a definite time frame in which they're going to make a purchase or vendor change. We talk about this in episode 31.
And finally, we get to what we're talking about today, Grow and Give. Now, these are sort of different. When we're talking about See, Think, and Do, those were our prospects and leads. When we get into Grow and Give, these are our actual customers, our current customers. So Grow is sort of that first state, and these are our happy and loyal customers. They're buying from us, and they would choose to buy from us again.
And we call it Grow because these prospects have an opportunity to grow into our organization. So they can grow their relationship with us, becoming not only more loyal, but also buying more and different products and services from us along the way. This is different from our Give state, where not only are they growing into us, but now they've come to know, like, trust, and love us, our brand, to the extent that they want to give back to our brand. So they can give back to us, whether it's referrals or reviews or just social advocacy, but they're eager to help us out. And see, I'm sure we can all think of brands that if asked, we would be glad to help out because they mean something to us.
And as we talk through this today, you're going to notice there's a lot of similarities between Grow and Give. And so that's why we've sort of combined this into one episode rather than diving into each of these separately.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it later, but Give could almost be looked at as a subset of Grow, but there's a reason why you want to keep them separate. We'll talk about that later. Why is it important for us to target Grow and Give?
That's a really great question. And I think, a lot of times when we're talking with customers and in, past lives with other companies we've worked with, the first rule of a lot of businesses is that it's important to retain current customers and build a loyal following. But a lot of times that's said and it isn't necessarily done. And it's really interesting when you start to look at some of the metrics. 63% of marketers felt that new customer acquisition is the most important advertising goal. But that doesn't necessarily make sense when you look at the fact that companies that are focusing on acquisition more than customer retention can spend up to 7 times more to acquire those new customers than to retain their current customers and grow that customer database. And so it's Grow and Give are important because it's more profitable for your business. It's better for your business if you focus on retaining and growing these customers rather than always trying to go out and find someone new to add to your database.
Yeah, just to nail that down a little further, there was a stat we ran across from Bain & Company that said that increasing customer retention by only 5% can actually increase profits by up to 95%. Churn, or this loss of customers and having to go and regain ground on customers, is a constant battle. And a lot of organizations are waking up to just exactly how much revenue they're leaving on the table by only providing one product or service to each customer instead of providing their full suite or gambit of services to each customer. But what's funny is this growth into the existing customer base, customer loyalty and customer retention. Generally, the organizations that we've worked with or worked for in the past see that as a role of customer service or maybe of their distribution channels, but not necessarily a role of the company itself, that that and not a role of sales and marketing. It gets passed off to this customer service department without any marketing support, which I think creates two problems. One, you have a disconnect in that messaging. So you have the marketing messaging, and then all of a sudden you're shifted over to the customer service messaging, which could be entirely different if there isn't any continuity there. And maybe it's a different brand and a different value prop that's being pushed over on the customer service side. And two, you're just missing a huge opportunity, because everything that works well in marketing to obtain that customer can also work very well to continue to grow that customer, to drive referrals, to increase customer loyalty and reduce churn.
Definitely. That's a great point. And it's hard because, yes, it is important to bring new lifeblood into the organization. It's important to bring in those new customers, but we don't have to choose one or the other. We don't have to just go after new customers or just retain. We can do both. We just aren't, or a lot of organizations aren't. And it doesn't make sense because the probability of selling to a current customer is much higher than selling to a new prospect. And not only that, and I don't have the stat right off in my head right now, but their current customers are going to buy more than new customers are, because again, they know you've delivered in the past, they're comfortable with you, and so the likelihood of them buying more and at higher values is much greater.
Another reason why just leaving this to customer service to try and do your cross-sells and upsells just doesn't make a whole lot of sense is because it comes back to what we've talked about in previous episodes, is that your prospects are emotional creatures. They make their buying decisions based on emotion. And so if you're not reinforcing your brand personality, the aspects of your brand that made them fall in love with you the first time with your current customers, they're not going to remember why they fell in love with you, and they're not going to be as apt to buy more from you. And so it's that very same emotional trigger-based marketing that you did to hook them in the first place becomes just as important to retain them and cross-sell them and upsell them. And that's not something that customer service is really designed to do.
No, and it's if this is something new for your organization and not something you've done before, when we get into the measurement section of today's podcast, we'll give you some specific metrics that you can use to speak to the C-suite and put it in terms that they understand and can get behind. But we'll get there in a little bit.
So what are our goals when we're looking at using marketing within the grow state and the give state?
Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at grow, really our core purpose here is we're looking to reinforce the brand and its key message.
And that creates a stickiness, right? It comes back to that statement of I'm reminded why I fell in love with you in the first place, and I can continue down that journey of building up that good emotion and good feel for that brand, so that I'm more apt to buy from them in the future.
That in turn increases revenue and makes this audience more open to upsell and cross-sell messaging, which in turn also increases revenue.
Mm-hmm. So there's a brand component, which is that know, like, and trust business. Mm-hmm. You can also have a direct response component within Grow, where we're actually asking this audience to pull out their wallets and give us more money, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is measurable. Again, we'll get to that in a little bit.
How about Give? How is Give a little different?
So when we're looking at Give, what we're really looking to do here is make sure that our customers have the tools and messaging to spread the word about our products or services, and not only spread the word, but do so in a language that's in alignment with our brand, and is motivating them to do that.
Right. So when we're motivating them, we could be motivating them to post a referral or to refer our product or service either online or just in person over the phone or in an in-person meeting. It doesn't have to be digital. We're also looking to get more reviews posted to review sites. And this is becoming more and more important, both from an SEO standpoint, but also from just a way that buyers buy today. And you're seeing even B2B services coming up with review sites today. So reviews are becoming more and more important. And then finally, through social advocacy or amplification. So we post something, we want our most loving customers to go out and share that content. We want them to come to our defenses should somebody badmouth us out online somewhere. And to do so, we need to arm them with the right messaging to do it.
And it's not, I think it's important to note here that asking isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. We want to ask them. I have multiple brands that I love, but I've got so many other things going on in my life that the last thing on my mind is writing them a referral. But if they ask me to do it, it's like, oh yeah, you've been good to me. I want to be good back to you. And especially if they make it easy for me to do by sending me an email and I just have to click a link, they've removed some of those barriers and I'm more apt to take that action.
So if those are our goals, what sort of content, either paid or organic type of content, do we need to get in front of people in Grow and Give?
So when we're talking about grow, again, we want to reinforce that core brand personality and value so that the customers remember why it is that they love us.
And then we don't want to stop providing value. So we talked a lot when we talked about particularly see and think states that we really wanted to add value to the prospects world. And we can do that in even greater ways when we get into Grow and Give because they're customers. So we can help them in ways that directly touch our product or service in helping them apply our product or service better to better their worlds, right? So we're adding value to their world at the same time. And in doing so, we can actually throw in not so subtle calls to action for cross sells and upsells because, hey, here's how you can use our service to better your world. But then if you upgrade to this, you can do it in even better or more impactful ways.
I think, we use Slack internally. We're sort of Slack addicts. And Slack is great at this. And if you think about it, if you have never used Slack before and you start hearing about all these features, it's not going to make sense. It's not going to resonate. It's not going to stick with you because you don't know what they're talking about. But Slack has this great way with the Slack bot of weekly updating you with new things that Slack can do. And you become more and more sucked into the Slack world and realize you can never live without it again. And I love what they've done here with their Grow content.
Now, Give is a little bit different. So remember, our Give audience, they already love us. That doesn't mean we don't need to remind them to love us and why they should love us, but they already love us. But we're going to put that brand content in front of them for a slightly different reason in this case. It's because we want them to be armed with that messaging verbatim, if possible, as they go out and spread the love to others, right? So if they're giving us a referral, we want them to put our brand in the same light that we do so that there isn't any dissonance when that referral comes back to our website or picks up the phone and calls us.
And while we are doing this, we're going to continue to provide value to these customers while we're encouraging these referrals and reviews and social engagements that are going to extend their brand network. The key there, again, though, is continuing to provide value to these customers.
So let's go through some examples of content that we could use from a paid or organic standpoint for both Grow and Give. Do you have any examples for Grow, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ones out there are email newsletters, and I think MailChimp is a phenomenal example of this, where they're showing a lot of brand personality and subtle reinforcement of their core value proposition, which is ease of use.
Yeah, and I would hope that MailChimp, who centered the world on email, would know how to do email right, but they actually do a really good job of this, of making you understand what it. More importantly, feel what it feels like to work with MailChimp in every email communication that they send. I think a great example of, and we'll link to it in the show notes, of sort of the cross-selling, upselling while adding value. If you've ever touched a Zoho product, Zoho is a broad suite of products that can all work independently to support a business, but they can also work together. And so Zoho published a comprehensive blog post on this topic, but they put out other content regularly as well that helps you understand how their products link together and can work together to get people, once you're into the Zoho ecosystem, you buy one product. They don't make any money when you buy one product. It's when you buy like 15 of their products that they start to make money. And so they do a great job of once you're in, getting you cross-sold and upsold on the other Zoho products.
Now, these two examples have focused on digital, but our Grow content can extend to other channels and other mediums. And I think Sony has a great example of this, or provides a great example of this. And they had an article in a publication recently that talked about the 6 things you didn't know you could do with PlayStation VR. Now, I'm not a PlayStation person, so I can't speak to this necessarily, but what was great about this content is it really reinforced the value of this product. And not only that, but was sharing with people who were already customers new things that they could do with it that they may not have known about.
Right, because your Grow content doesn't necessarily have to be selling something new. If your customers or your prospects aren't using the products and services they bought already to their fullest potential, then they're less sticky and they're more apt to go with another product. They may even put down your product and pick up another one for a feature that they didn't know was already in your product, right? So they switched horses because they thought they could get something else that they needed that they could have already gotten with yours if you just had informed them on how to use it right.
And again, this appeared in a publication, so this has that third-party validity here, where it's not coming from Sony, even though based on the article, it probably did come from Sony, or Sony was actively involved in it. But the fact that it was published in a different publication just sort of adds that extra level of credibility to it.
So let's talk about some examples of Give content. And here again, on an email side, I think MailChimp does a great job with Give in that most of their blog posts, or most of their emails, I'm sorry, not only are helping you use the product better, but they're also reinforcing just that core value proposition of ease of use, as well as being fun and playful in the process in a classic MailChimp sort of way. And so they are helping their audience, who are avid MailChimp users, not only grow into their product under Grow, but under Give, they're giving them exactly the words and phrases to use to talk about MailChimp in the future.
Now, one of the other things we talked about in Give is asking for referrals, and I think Nimble does a great job of this, and that they're regularly asking users to leave reviews on sites. And they even go as far as to mention exactly which boxes to check in the actual review.
Yeah, and we'll post a screen grab of a Nimble email in the show notes as well, so you can take a peek at that. But yeah, it's very specific instructions, easy to follow call to action with a button right there to click to do it. So they're taking all of the friction that they can possibly take out, as well as letting that person know exactly what you want them to say. It goes, it's down to like the simple trick of, if you're looking for references for yourself personally, either as you go to get a new job or in business, you write the reference from the person that you're asking it for and say, hey, can you tweak these words into your own? Because it reduces that friction and you're more likely to get the reference. You can do the same thing as a business and say, hey, here's where you need to click. Here's some examples of what some other people wrote. Can you please write something nice about us? And they're going to do it.
So, Steve, let me ask you a question, because as we're talking about this, something our listeners might be wondering is, typically when we're talking about journey states, we only want to target and send content and messaging to one journey state at a time. But when we're talking about Grow and Give, these are current customers, and obviously we want to keep upselling to them and cross-selling to them. But if they're ready to give a referral, we want to ask for that too. Can someone receive both Grow and Give content?
The short answer is yes, but in reality, you want to take a look at priorities, because you have a finite audience of customers, and there's only so many times you can ask them to do something before you're gonna hit some level of fatigue with that, right? And if you look at what are the benefits of an incremental increase in revenue off of one customer, that has an impact once. But if you can turn a customer into a true advocate and get them to refer more business to you or close more sales, that can have a far greater impact from a revenue standpoint than simply, growing into an existing customer. So it makes sense to prioritize and take your Give audience, if you can identify them, and ask them to post the reviews, to give the referrals, and do those activities that are going to have longer lasting, greater impact, and then focus your Grow asks of growing into the product to your Grow audience, and get the most out of those limited opportunities you have to approach your customer base and ask them for more.
And I think that the reason that works so well is because when we look at effective content for Grow and Give, there's overlap between the two. In both cases, the content needs to be reinforcing brand personality and core value propositions. So we don't have a dissonance there. We've got, equal playing field, that we're trying to accomplish the same thing with both Grow and Give content. We're also making sure that our content is making an ask. And not only is the ask clear and obvious, but we've given them a path to accomplish what that ask is, whether it's providing what the next steps are to make that next purchase, or, like the Nimble example where we have a button and we say, just click here to leave us a review.
We also want to create a sense of urgency if possible. And so you look at things like this is where you might have a special insider sale for your existing customers, but it has a definitive end date to get them to cross-sell or upsell into another product. Or in the case of an ask for a referral or a review, maybe you incentivize that with a token gift card, but you have to do it by a certain date in order to get it.
Now, that's not going to be possible in every scenario, but there will be scenarios where it is possible, and it feels right for your brand. And so you'll have to sort of take that on a case-by-case basis.
And then just like we do on the in think and do content, where we're reinforcing the why with more rational or logical examples, when we're doing cross sells and upsells, we have to remember to do the same thing there. So they already love us, hopefully. We're looking to get them to continue to grow into our brand, but then we also need to back that up with some rational decision making, so that if asked as to why they did this by their spouse or by their boss or by a colleague, they actually have some rational basis for why they bought into your brand further.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Doesn't go over well. I can attest to that, as having a conversation with my husband about that recently. So when we talk about content differing, really, like I said when we started talking about this, is that they're very similar. The brand standpoint is the same, and in both cases, we're looking to add value or provide utility. Where we're really seeing a difference here is in the call to action.
Yeah. So when you're creating like a customer newsletter, 80% of it's going to be the same. It's just going to be that bright, shiny call to action that you're going to want to swap out. And you can do that with a personalization or simply establishing two different lists of your most loyal customers versus your ones that you just want them to buy more from you. I think that this brings us to a good point for a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk about how we actually execute this at a tactical level as far as targeting goes, as well as how we measure for success. So let's take a moment and go help some people.
Before we continue, I'd like to take a quick moment to ask you iterative marketers a small but meaningful favor and ask that you give a few dollars to a charity that's important to one of our own. This week, an anonymous donor from Arizona has asked that you make a donation to Books for Africa, an organization that collects, sorts, ships, and distributes books to students of all ages in Africa. Over the past 12 months, the charity has sent 2.4 million books, 665 computers, and 200 e-readers containing 1.6 million digital books to 21 African countries. Learn more at booksforafrica.org or visit the link in the show notes. If you would like to submit your cause for consideration for our next podcast, please visit iterativemarketing.net/podcast and click the Share a Cause button. We love sharing causes that are important to you.
And we're back. So before the break, we talked about the goals behind targeting our grow and give states, as well as some examples of some content or what that might look like to do so. But we didn't talk about how to deliver that content. And I think that would be a good starting point here. So how do we get this content in front of the right eyeballs of our either grow or give audience?
How do you want to do it? Because when we start talking about our current customers, the sky is the limit. We have so many ways to reach them. And I think, we've talked about this in a few of our examples, but email marketing is, in my mind, the most obvious choice.
Yeah, I think with most of these tactics, it's going to be database driven. We have a database of these folks, hopefully, although not always if you have a complex distribution model. We'll talk about that later, but hopefully you have a database of your customers. And so there's a lot of unique ways to pinpoint your messaging down to exactly who you want to get in front of. Email is obvious. Direct mail, it's not dead. There are opportunities to use this very effectively. Certainly test and see if it works with your audience or not. But it can be relatively inexpensive because your audience is only your customer base, not the world. And then if you're a little bit more progressive, another way to just reach out and directly touch someone is SMS or mobile messaging. And we're seeing a rise of this now more and more with a younger demographic getting away from email and focusing more on SMS.
Again, looking to our database, CRM targeting, specifically using for that to target social media advertising like Facebook or Twitter, is a phenomenal way to get in front of your audience and introduce not only new messaging, but a new channel, a new way to reach them.
Yeah, you want to get away from just boosting posts,
please,
or targeting posts using targeting ads via whatever mechanisms within the system, because if you're targeting your current customers, you have that database. You can upload that to Facebook, have it do the match in order to go back and build you a custom audience within Facebook or Twitter that you can go and get exactly the right content in front of for Grow and Give. So you're not targeting cross-sells, upsells, or please give us a referral to people who aren't existing customers.
And not only that, and I'm a little tangent here, but you upload that list and you've got some really great analytics, and you have the ability to do some sort of self-checking on the personas that you've developed and see if there's any places that you need to make some changes or modifications. So, an extra little added benefit of that CRM targeting on social media.
You can do that same CRM targeting also on the web. AdRoll allows you to upload that system, as well as I believe that AdWords has a customer match functionality as well, where you can upload your lists and then target display advertising at them. There are some caveats here, though. If your audience is too small, if you're more a small business or a boutique firm that only has a handful of customers, you're going to hit limits pretty quickly on the size of your list, because you have to have so many matches in order to be able to market to that list. For Facebook, it's like 20, and that's not that hard to hit for most businesses. But for the web, you start getting into like 50 people, and when you start looking at, do I have 50 advocates that I can match with an email address to a cookie online? That actually means having more like 100 advocates, and that can be a harder hill to climb for some businesses.
Web retargeting is another option. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think you meant paid search retargeting, right? So when we start getting into paid search, Google AdWords actually has a mechanism to show different ads to your customers. And this comes through a functionality called remarketing lists for search advertising, which just rolls off the tongue. That's why most people refer to it by the acronym of RLSA. But it allows you to target different pay-per-click ads to your existing customers, so that if they go to Google you or Google a relevant product to what it is that you're selling, their ads can focus more on reminding them why they love you, or maybe ask them, hey, you haven't referred us lately, or can you give us a review, or something along those lines.
I totally forgot about that, and that I think it's a testament to how many different options we have here. I was actually thinking of web retargeting, where we place a pixel when someone either logs into the website or into our support site, and then we're able to follow them around the web with different display advertising.
Yeah, and if you can get the software developers involved in this, you can actually create retargeting pools off of your segmentation within your customer database. So this requires you to have an online presence that somebody has to log into, but once they log in, the website has a direct connection back to the database supporting it. So if you have everybody segmented in your database as Grow or Give, now you just push that information up to the website, and push the right pixel to the right people, and you're guaranteed to get it right, because they had to log in order to get the pixel. But they have to have a reason to log into your site, and not every business gives them that.
That's true.
The same thing is true if you have a mobile app. If you have a mobile app, chances are they've authenticated with the mobile app, or even if just by virtue of having the mobile app, you know that they're a customer, and now you can send them those notifications, the mobile notifications, where it'll pop up on their phone. You want to use this with caution and limitation, because it could drive people to just uninstall your app. But if you use it here and there and you're adding value, it can be a valuable way to get in front of your audience as well.
And then finally, website personalization. And this requires either a login, targeting through IP targeting, or, having a cookie, but it allows you to personalize that web experience based on that user, whether it's their journey state or their persona, or a combination of both.
Exactly. Now, this is relatively easy to do if we're selling direct to our customers and we have to ship product to them, so we know their address, or they have to have a login into our website to buy from us, or we have a CRM system because our account people are talking to our customers every day. Doing this sort of direct interaction with our customer base and knowing whether they're Grow or Give is pretty easy, but it gets a lot more complicated if you have a complex distribution channel and your product goes to a distributor or a rep, who then they make a deal with another distributor, and then it ends up in retail. The retail outlet finally makes the sale to the customer, and you're like, I have no idea where my product went.
And there's a lot of businesses that are in this situation. And while it is more work, it's not impossible.
Yeah, you really just need to come up with some creative tactics to close that loop. And so this is where you get into rebates or warranty cards and other things like that to force that consumer or incentivize that consumer to come back and interact with you online, either prior to the purchase in the case of a coupon or post-purchase in the case of some sort of add-on or promotion. My son got the safe version of Exploding Kittens, which is a game put out by the author of The Oatmeal. And right there in the top of the Exploding Kittens box, there was yes, there is a game called Exploding Kittens.
I have no idea what it is, but every time you say Exploding Kittens, I can't keep a straight face.
But right there in the top of the box, it was, visit our website for a free gift. And of course, what they're doing there is they're closing that loop because we bought that game through Amazon, and then Amazon reports the sale back to the publisher, and then the publisher may or may not report the sale back to the author, and the author really wants the database of who bought his game. And so this gives him the ability to do that by offering some free offer if you go out and register or just take advantage of it with a unique code, allowing you to get that special offer.
And then I think another opportunity there is looking for co-marketing opportunities with your distribution channel. And that allows you to build that database and those cookie pools. And, typically your distribution channel is open to having additional marketing help. So it's not a hard ask, but it does require some, again, creativity and some coordination.
Yeah, if you just reach out to your distributors and say, hey, can you give us your database? They're going to be like, no. But if you reach out to your distributors and say, hey, we're offering free marketing. Oh, free marketing. Okay, I'll take that. And all of a sudden, the nature of the conversation goes completely different.
So we've talked about the different ways that we can reach this audience and market to them. But, we talked earlier about we've got some subtle differences in the content that we put out to Grow or Give. So how do we know if someone is in Grow versus Give?
Partly, we can detect the different types of content that they're engaging with. So if we are if we have content out on our site that talks about a referral program, well, if they're visiting the referral program page, chances are they're at least open to the idea of referring us. So if we have content or blog posts or various things for them to interact with, either coming out through email or direct on the site, that indicate that they are at least open to the idea of singing our praises, then we can move them from Grow over to Give.
And just like the bridge content we've used in our other journey states, we're going to want to dangle some of our Give offers or give messaging to our Grow audience so that we're able to identify who is so engaged with our product and attuned to our brand that they want to refer us to their family and friends. And again, to Steve's point, this becomes their engagement with that content or with those direct response ads. That becomes the signal to our marketing automation that someone has moved from Grow to Give.
Yeah, I like to follow basically an 80-20 rule. So we're going to want to put 80% of our messaging to our current customers that we believe are in Grow should be focused on cross-sells, upsells, engaging more with the products or services they already own. And 20% of that should be driving that referral or review type activity or social advocacy type activity, and that's the bridge content that helps us detect that. And then if they do move over to Give, then we flip that. 20% of our content is now focused on cross-sells, upsells to make sure that we aren't missing any major opportunities there. But 80% of our content is now focused on that referral or advocacy type of component. And that way we're focusing our priorities where they should be, where we're going to drive the most opportunity or revenue from that audience, but we're not neglecting the opportunity to either detect when somebody has made that leap to where they're now in Give, or losing the opportunity to cross-sell and upsell to those that are in that Give state.
Now, if you're running a net promoter score program, then typically you can sort of break this out in that between your Grow and your Give, and that your Give audience, sorry, as I get this backwards, your Give audience is going to primarily be your 9s and 10s. And then your Grow audience will be on the lower end of that spectrum.
Yeah, depending on where your bell curve lands on your net promoter score, it might be just your 10s. It could be your 9s and your 10s. You want to look at where people have fallen, but definitely a great opportunity to mine that data if you're already running an NPS program. How do we measure success when it comes to Grow and Give?
Yes. So how we measure success for Grow and Give is actually going to differ based on our two different journey states. And this is very important. And I mentioned this before, but if you are in an organization who maybe you're focused on new customer acquisition, and you want to sort of change that conversation, talking about these specific metrics is going to appeal to your C-suite and make it easier to make it happen. So when we're talking about Grow, there's really two different metrics that we can look at. The first of those is attributable revenue from marketing activities. So this is our upsells and our cross-sells. What additional revenue were we able to bring to the table by marketing to our current customers?
And you have to be a little bit careful here because you don't want to be taking away credit from those people on the front lines that might be making some of these sales happen. So if you're an organization where you have your customer reps or your account managers or account executives that are on the front line making and closing these deals, you don't want to necessarily take credit from them. But you also want to make sure that you can demonstrate that those people who were cross-sold or upsold engaged with our marketing activities here, and here, right? And show how there is a correlation between the marketing activities they engaged with and the increase in revenue or sales. If you don't have a front line, take credit for it all because you don't have to worry about it. But if you do, you have to maybe walk a little gingerly here because just like you don't want to annoy sales too badly on taking credit for their work, you don't want to annoy your customer service or account management or whatever you call that front line with your existing customers by taking too much credit from them.
That's a good point, but I think it's also important to recognize that similar to our relationship with sales, we're not a separate entity from that customer service team or that frontline team. And so as marketing, where can we identify opportunities to help them to close those sales or to, upsell those products or cross-sell those products? And, any time that we can have that brand consistency, that consistency in messaging from what they're seeing online or what they're getting in their emails or even what they're seeing in traditional advertising to what they're experiencing with our frontline team members, that's a huge win. And we want to be able to look for that. So similar to the relationship that we've built with sales and the support that we provide to sales, we want to find that same opportunity with our frontline team members as well.
Now, the other metric for Grow, because it's not just growing into customers, it's also retaining customers. So the other metric you want to look at is churn rate. And how can you improve or reduce churn rate when it comes to your existing customers using marketing as a vehicle to do that? And so that KPI will be another thing that you want to look at.
So if you were to go to your C-suite with these two metrics, I would be very surprised if they were not on board with looking at potentially expanding a marketing program to your current customers. Now, those are our Grow. What about when we get into Give?
So into Give, it's straightforward, but it can be a little bit harder to attach directly to revenue because our KPIs here are going to be the number of referrals, which I guess you can pretty easily attach a revenue number to, but also things like reviews and social advocacy. Those get a little bit softer because just because you have 1,000,001 positive reviews out on your website, being able to, or on other people's websites, being able to attach that back to a revenue number can be kind of tricky. But it's also a vanity metric that the C-suite probably would appreciate too. So if you can say that you can increase the number of positive referrals and people talking about your organization in a good light, that's something that's going to interest them.
In my experience, typically the C-suite is very interested in reviews. And so again, it may not necessarily tie directly back to revenue, but it's something that I'm sure is on their radar.
Now, social advocacy, however, that is a little different angle. That's almost an insurance policy in addition to a marketing amplifier, because if you can build an army of people who love you, then anytime that organization gets in some hot water online, that army will go out and defend it. And that can be a hugely beneficial and risk mitigation tactic that the C-suite would also be interested in hearing about.
Yes, having worked on managing social media accounts before, it's a lot easier when your advocates come to your defense and you don't necessarily have to go and respond to someone who's upset, or at least you can respond to them and then you've got other people backing you up. It feels pretty good and it makes your job a lot easier.
So let's summarize what we talked about today. We talked about the different journey states and how Grow and Give is really your customer base versus all the other journey states being prospects at that point. Your Grow audience is those that have purchased from you at least once or maybe twice, but there's more that they can buy from you, and they're also not really in love with you to the extent that they're going to go out and sing your praises yet.
Give are going to be those customers who have purchased your product and are so in love with you that they want to tell others about you.
When it comes to content, the content that we create to support our customers universally should reinforce our brand and our value proposition for different reasons between Grow and Give, but either way, brand is front and center. We also want to make sure that our ask is clear and obvious and that we are actually asking our customers to do things for us.
If possible, you want to create a sense of urgency. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're reinforcing the purchasing rationale so that our customers can justify the emotional decision they made, not only to themselves, but to their friends and family and coworkers as well.
When it comes to targeting methods are going to be identical for Grow and Give and largely database driven, which is both a benefit or is either a benefit or a detriment depending on whether your organization is selling directly and you have this massive database to now capitalize on, or whether you have to sell through a complex distribution channel and you now have a bit of an effort in front of you to build that database.
And finally, measurement. When we're talking about Grow, this is attributable revenue from marketing activities and churn rate. And when we're talking about Give, this is referrals, reviews, and social advocacy.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for making more than a little time for us this week. If you haven't already, please take a moment and go out to iTunes and give us a review. If you do, we will give you a shout out on one of our future podcasts. If you have already, I apologize. We're short reviews right now, so we're not able to read the ones that are out there. But once we can, we will give you a shout out. And until next week, onward and upward.
If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast directory. If you want notes and links to resources discussed on the show, sign up to get them emailed to you each week at iterativmarketing.net. There, you'll also find the Iterative Marketing blog and our community LinkedIn group where you can share ideas and ask questions of your fellow iterative marketers. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our username is @ITER8IVE, or email us at podcast@iterativemarketing.net. The Iterative Marketing Podcast is a production of Brilliant Metrics, a consultancy helping brands and agencies rid the world of marketing waste. Our producer is Heather Ullman with transcription assistance from Emily Bechtel. Our music is by Seastock Audio Music Production and Sound Design. You can check them out at seastockaudio.com. We'll see you next week. Until then, onward and upward.